Across the vast expanse of time, mythologies have forged the world. From the depths of chaos to the flames of distant realms, every culture has woven tales of gods, heroes, and celestial wonders. Welcome to Myth2Myth, your mythological portal. Subscribe for more epic journeys. Visit myth2myth.com and discover all our products. In the silence after a tyrant's feast, when time had swallowed his own children and still found no peace, a pulse began to stir. The rise of Zeus was not announced by war, but by a whisper. Thunder coiled in darkness. Cronus vomited stone and gods alike, yet his reign of silence clung to the world. In a hidden gorge of Crete, beneath the watchful gaze of Gaia and the weeping roots of ancient trees, a young god stepped back into the light. The trauma that clung to his siblings was a second skin, yet their eyes widened at the taste of air. They remembered the stone that fooled their father and the prophecy that promised a child would topple time itself. Gaia's counsel called for patience and for the awakening of forgotten allies. The Cyclopes, whose hammers shape storms, and the Hecatoncheires, whose 100 arms can tear mountains. No battle has begun, but pieces have moved. A world held in the stomach of a tyrant prepares to breathe. They emerge not as newborns but as young gods, blinking against a sun they had not seen since infancy. Hestia's hands, still trembling, kindle a small flame upon the soil. Demeter kneels, pressing her palm to the earth as if greeting a long-lost lover. Hera lifts her chin, hair falling like ink over her shoulders, reclaiming dignity from devouring darkness. Hades presses a steady hand to Zeus's shoulder. Poseidon's fingers curl toward the distant rumble of the sea. Around them, the Cretan air smells of pine and prophecy. No thrones await, only each other. They do not speak of rebellion. They whisper gratitude. In their embrace, there is both fragility and iron. Cronus swallowed them to avoid his fate, and Rhea tricked him with a stone swaddled in cloth. Now the children he tried to erase stand together, not yet warriors, but a family reborn. Tears and laughter mingle. They place their trust in the youngest of them all, the boy who pried open their prison with cunning and courage. The gods are free, but freedom is not strength. In the shadowed glens of Crete, they relearn themselves. Hestia tends a fire that never dies, feeding it with twigs and prayers until its warmth seeps into their bones. Demeter sprinkles seeds in the thin soil, coaxing green shoots through stone. Hera arranges their simple dwelling, weaving order out of chaos. Hades, drawn to the cave's darkness, listens to the murmurs of the earth. Poseidon wanders to the cliffs to feel the spray of distant waves. Zeus moves among them not as king but as brother. He carries bowls of milk and honey like a priest of their own memories, repeating the names of the nymphs who hid him: Ida, Adrasteia, Melissa. He listens to each sibling's tale, acknowledging the hurt they carry. He reminds them that a prophecy still hangs over their father's head. A child will end Cronus's reign. Around their campfire, the voices of the Idaean nymphs rise in song. Crete's cave becomes both home and hearth, a place where bruised gods regain their breath and pledge to stand together. In the quiet between thunder and action, Gaia speaks. The earth itself hums with her voice, a vibration that travels through the stone and roots into Zeus's bones. She tells him that victory over the Titans requires allies long forgotten: the Cyclopes, smiths of lightning, and the Hecatoncheires, giants with 100 arms who were imprisoned because their strength frightened even the sky. Cronus set Campi, a serpent-bodied horror, to guard them in the black of Tartarus. Gaia warns that brute force will not be enough. Zeus must use cunning. The Cyclopes will forge weapons to match a tyrant's scythe, and the 100-handed will hurl mountains. They are terrifying in form, but loyal in gratitude. Gaia tells him that rebellion must be born of wisdom, not anger. Only unity of gods and outcasts can break Cronus's cycle of devouring. Zeus listens as the earth thrums through him. Fear of descending into the abyss freezes his breath. Hope for allies kindles it again. He promises to free them, to honor them, to wield their gifts not for personal glory, but for cosmic balance. The preparation for the descent is a ritual conducted in the quiet hum of fear and resolve, far from the counsel of a war room. Zeus seeks not the strength of his siblings, but the singular wisdom of Metis, the Titaness, whose mind sees pathways that brute force cannot. In a secluded chamber, lit only by the soft glow of lichen, she gives him not a weapon, but a small ceramic vial. It contains a potion distilled from silence itself, brewed from roots that grow where sound dares not trespass. She instructs him on Campe, the guardian of Tartarus, a creature of chaotic fury whose greatest weakness is the very multiplicity of her senses. Victory, Metis advises, will come from stillness, not from the storm. His siblings watch from a distance, their faces a mixture of desperate hope and terror. Hera, Hades, Poseidon, Demeter, and Hestia understand this is a journey that cannot be shared. It is a burden only Zeus, the spared son, is destined to carry. He paints his face with ash, not as a warrior but as a ghost about to haunt the house of his enemies, ready to prove his worth alone. Alone, Zeus slips through the veil between worlds, a tear in reality that bleeds a chilling darkness. The air changes, becoming dense and cold, tasting of ancient iron and petrified regret. The silence here is a physical presence, a pressure that pushes against his eardrums, broken only by the phantom echo of chains being dragged for millennia. The chasm walls are not dead stone. They seem to sweat a cold dampness and watch with a passive malevolence. This is the antithesis of Crete, the reverse of a weaver's tapestry, where his sun-drenched, vibrant youth was the perfect image. Every step downward is an act of will against the primal instinct to flee back toward the light. He feels the oppressive order of Cronus in every rock, a cosmos built on fear and suppression. Hope is a tiny, flickering flame in his mind, and he shields it from the cutting wind of despair as he ventures deeper into hell's throat, utterly and completely on his own. In the oppressive gloom, movement draws his eye. Campe reveals herself not all at once but as a nightmare unfolding. Her woman's torso rises from a writhing mass of hissing serpents, her dragon wings tear at the stagnant air, and the monstrous heads wringing her waist snarl with their own separate hungers. She is the embodiment of Cronus's dread, a living wall of chaos. Zeus does not charge with a battle cry. He remembers Metis's counsel: attack the senses, not the body. As Campe's many eyes finally focus on him, he hurls the vial. The ceramic shatters and the silent potion erupts not as liquid, but as a sightless, soundless fog that clings to her. She roars, but the sound dies in her throat. She blinks, but the mist smothers her vision, showing her nothing but a numbing void. Blinded and disoriented, she thrashes in fury, her claws carving the air where he stood moments before. Moving with nymph-taught agility, Zeus darts in and with a simple Cretan bronze blade, finds the one soft gap beneath her scales. The strike is precise and silent. The great creature collapses, and the silence that follows is no longer oppressive, but empty. The first lock on the world's prison has been broken. Beyond the fallen guardian, in a cavern that seems a hollowed skull, Zeus finds the first of Gaia's forgotten children. Chained with an iron that drank their strength, the Cyclopes, Arges, Brontes, and Steropes lie in a torpor. Their immense bodies are gaunt, the light in their single eyes as faint as dying embers. Zeus approaches without arrogance, offering a waterskin of nectar he had kept hidden. The divine scent rouses them. They stare with ancient suspicion. "A son of the devourer dares seek us," rumbles Brontes, his voice like a rock slide. Zeus does not offer excuses. He kneels, a gesture of humility that shocks the giants. He speaks not of the power he seeks, but of the balance that has been lost. He speaks of a cosmos where the ability to forge storms is a gift, not a crime to be punished with eternal darkness. He promises not power, but purpose. With a flash of pure light channeled from his own life force, he shatters their chains. The Cyclopes rise, energy crackling through their veins for the first time in an age, seeing in Zeus not the image of Cronus, but the promise of a new dawn. His mission in the abyss is not over. Leaving the Cyclopes to regain their breath, he pushes onward, alone, into the deepest, most lightless pits of Tartarus. There, in a chasm so vast it could swallow mountains, he finds the Hecatoncheires. If the Cyclopes were imposing, the hundred-handed are overwhelming, terrifying. Cottus, Briareus, and Gaius are less creatures than living cataclysms, a forest of 100 arms and 50 heads per body, a cacophony of thought and power. Bound by chains forged from the fear of Uranos himself, they exude an aura of chaotic might and primordial resentment. Zeus approaches, his small flame of hope seeming insignificant before such raw power. He announces his purpose, to break the cycle of fathers fearing and imprisoning their children. Briareus, with 10 of his mouths, asks the defining question: why unchain a force you cannot hope to control? Why unleash an avalanche and pray it does not bury you? Zeus gives the simple truth that defines his entire rebellion. Because power should not be buried by fear, it must be guided by wisdom. With that promise, he uses the last of his strength to break their bonds. The 100 arms of each giant rise free, and Tartarus trembles to its very foundations. Upon their triumphant return from Tartarus to the light of Crete, the world itself seems to take a fresh breath. As their first act of freedom and gratitude, the Cyclopes build a forge. They need no tools, their fists are hammers, the island's bedrock their anvil. Arges coaxes fire from a dormant volcano's heart, Brontes summons thunder to work the bellows, and Steropes catches a stray lightning bolt to give the final polish. They work not with common metal, but with the pure essence of the elements. For Zeus, they forge a bundle of lightning bolts, trapping the fury of a tempest in a weapon he can hold. For Poseidon, they craft a trident that resonates with the pulse of the ocean, able to call forth tsunamis or calm the wildest waves. For Hades, they weave the darkness between stars into a helm of invisibility, an artifact that does not reflect light, but utterly negates it. The weapons are presented in a solemn ceremony. The air smells of scorched air and destiny. The gods understand these are not mere gifts, but responsibilities, the keys to a new cosmos, forged in gratitude and tempered by ancient pain. The forge falls silent, but the newborn power hums in the air. On a secluded cliff, the three brothers contemplate their emblems in solitude. Poseidon holds the trident, feeling the wild energy of the sea course through him, a tide aching for release. "It feels alive," he murmurs, "like the heart of a leviathan." Hades lifts his helm. It does not gleam. It seems to drink the starlight, a hole in reality. As he places it on his head, his form melts into shadow, and for the first time he feels the peace of non-existence, the power to watch without being seen. This is not a weapon, he concludes to himself, with a calm that surprises him. It is a sanctuary. Zeus, in turn, holds the lightning. The weight he feels is not of metal, but of the future. He sees in its jagged form not just the tool to defeat Cronus, but the burden of ruling after. Every crackling spark is a promise of justice, but also a warning against tyranny. He closes his fist around it, not with possession, but with the resolve of a guardian. This is not a scepter, it is a promise. Once freed, the Hecatoncheires test their limbs upon Crete's rocky plain. A single gesture from Cottus lifts a ring of stones into the sky. Briareus spins them like planets. Gaia hurls them toward the horizon with the force of meteor storms. The earth shakes, not with rage but with rehearsal. Gaia watches with a blend of pride and caution. Zeus approaches them, not in command, but in counsel. He asks them to direct their might with intention, to shatter walls, not lives, to throw down tyranny, not to create new chains. The giants nod, acknowledging that discipline is as sacred as strength. Poseidon feels the vibrations in the sea and senses a future in which earthquakes and tsunamis might answer the call of justice. Hades marvels at the echoing silence that follows each stone's fall, a silence like a breath before change. The Hecatoncheires pledge themselves to Zeus with the tapping of 1,000 fingers upon the earth. They promise to serve as shields and siege engines, to throw mountains only when the cosmos calls. The alliance of Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires becomes a symphony of creation. In valleys near Mount Olympus, Arges and Brontes melt ore, while Cronus and Gaia shape boulders the size of small hills. Together, they craft great siege engines woven from tree trunks and sinew, slings that can fling boulders like pebbles, and barricades that absorb lightning without burning. Hestia tends the forge's fire, Demeter supplies fibers for ropes, Hera oversees strategy, ensuring each machine aligns with their future tactics. Zeus wanders among them, hands occasionally guiding a rope or offering water to a giant, but mostly listening. He sees the joy that comes from building rather than being built for. He understands that true unity itself is a kind of weapon, the union of brute force and artisan skill, of earth and sky, of old pain and new purpose. The air buzzes with anticipation. Laughter bursts from Briareus's many mouths. There is a sense that they are not simply preparing for war, but rehearsing a future in which every strength finds its place without fear. To mark their separation from Cronus's realm and to claim their own, Zeus leads his allies to the highest peak in Greece. Mount Olympus is a spine of stone-piercing sky, a place where clouds cling like robes and the air tastes thin. The climb is arduous, but each step is a declaration of independence. Hecatoncheires clear the path, rolling away boulders. Cyclopes carve niches for shelters. Hestia carries her perpetual flame to the summit. When they reach the top, they do not declare dominion. They build hearths and store weapons. Hestia lights a fire that will never be extinguished, a beacon of home rather than conquest. Poseidon gazes down to the sea, feeling both distance and connection. Demeter peers at valleys that will one day bloom again under her hand. Olympus becomes not a castle, but a camp of purpose, an altar where they can look Cronus in the eye. The mountain itself feels different, less like stone, more like promise. Zeus vows to protect this place not because it will crown him, but because it will anchor a new order. Not every Titan chooses sides. The world's rivers encircle the land like a silver serpent, and their father, Oceanus, watches from his watery throne. Zeus approaches not with threats, but with respect. He knows Oceanus and Tethys have refrained from Cronus's tyranny. At their shoreline palace, waves hiss softly as if aware of the tension. Zeus bows and asks for neither alliance nor opposition. He acknowledges that life depends on their waters, that war should not poison their currents. In response, from the depths emerges Styx, Oceanus' daughter, a river so sacred that even gods swear by her name. She brings with her her own children, Zelos, rivalry, Nike, victory, Kratos, strength, and Bia, force. Styx kneels and vows that she and her offspring will fight at Zeus's side for the sake of justice. Oceanus nods, his eyes like deep pools. He remains neutral, but does not hinder his daughter's choice. This moment is not about numbers, but about principles. Some primordial forces choose to stand aside. Others step forward, embodying the conflict between order and change. In the glen of training, the presence of Styx and her children transforms preparation into initiation. Zelos incites rivalry, not of hatred, but of drive. He whispers challenges to Poseidon and Hades, pushing them to refine their control. Nike teaches them that true victory is not gained in a single blow, but in endurance and measured strikes. Kratos exemplifies physical and moral strength, lifting boulders alongside the Hecatoncheires and reminding Hera that authority must rest on courage. Bia, the embodiment of force used rightly, mentors Demeter on channeling her power into vines that can bind without strangling. Under their tutelage, Hestia learns to maintain her flame against wind. Poseidon practices stirring and stilling water. Hera sharpens strategies that consider both heart and law. The training ground feels less like a barracks and more like a temple of virtues. Each exercise is a meditation on restraint. Zeus watches, grateful. These personified energies add color to their alliance. turning a band of survivors into a disciplined, purposeful force. Through sweat and laughter, they remember why they fight, not to dominate, but to restore harmony. As the camp on Olympus grows, two Titanesses arrive quietly, Themis, embodiment of divine law, and Mnemosyne, keeper of memory. They approach Zeus not as adversaries, but as elders. Themis reminds him that overturning tyranny does not guarantee justice. He must weigh every decision against the cosmic scales. She warns that rebellion can birth new tyrannies if it loses sight of balance. Mnemosyne shares stories of Uranus's fall and the first betrayal of Cronus, urging them to learn from history. She reminds Zeus that memory is a tool. Forgetting mistakes invites repetition. They do not pledge swords, but they offer wisdom. Zeus receives them with humility, understanding that counsel may be more precious than might. He promises to distinguish between those titans who support Cronus's oppression and those who stood aside. The alliances are no longer simply about defeating a foe, but about drafting a charter for the cosmos. In their presence, the gods realize that their struggle is not only physical, it is moral. The revolution must be built on principles that outlast lightning. Far to the south, the halls of Othrys echo with unease. Cronus paces amid pillars of obsidian, the scythe that once felled his father gripped so tightly his knuckles pale. He senses change in the air, distant lightning that he does not control, tremors that do not obey his will. He summons his brothers, Coeus, Creus, Iapetus, Hyperion, and demands answers. Coeus speaks of strange movements in the stars. Creus murmurs about constellations shifting like omen. Hyperion notices a brightness in the north, a flicker of something more potent than dawn. Iapetus, father of mortal fate, suggests caution. Cronus's mind darts to the prophecy he once tried to avoid. A son will dethrone him. Fear curdles into paranoia. He commands Campi to reinforce Tartarus, unaware of her fall. He doubles guards on every door. The silence that once gave him comfort now scratches at his ears like a warning. He senses that one of the children he devoured has escaped and grown, yet his pride forbids him from admitting weakness. In his fortress of time, cracks begin to form. Faced with omens he cannot interpret, Cronus convenes his closest allies. Hyperion advocates for a preemptive strike on the unknown northern mountain. Creus suggests watching the stars until they reveal more. Iapetus warns that acting on fear hastens destiny. Among them stands Atlas, son of Iapetus, whose silence carries the weight of something immense. He speaks little, but he feels. He senses the trembling in the firmament, as if the very ether was sighing in the face of inevitable change. Themis and Mnemosyne, though invited, remain silent, their loyalties divided between kin and justice. Cronus's patience thins. He remembers the scorn he felt at his own father's tyranny and how he rose against Uranus with Gaia's help. Yet he fails to see the reflection. He dismisses caution and orders reinforcements to the borders. He forbids any Titan to leave Othrys without his command. Unspoken in the room is a truth that even Titans feel. The age of Cronus has reached its zenith. The council breaks without resolution. Only fear and suspicion remain, thickening the air like storm clouds. The absence of Oceanus, neutral and distant, speaks louder than any council. Not long after, three Titanesses, Tethys of the rivers, Themis of justice, and Mnemosyne of memory, visit Cronus in private. They come not as conspirators, but as voices of reason. Tethys says that the rivers refuse to support unnecessary war. The waters may be life-giving, but can also erode foundations if forced. Themis warns that cosmic balance cannot bear endless tyranny. Cycles must turn. Mnemosyne recalls how Uranus's fall began with similar warnings ignored. They suggest Cronus offer clemency, share power, recognize the grown children he had swallowed. Cronus hears their words as betrayal. He accuses them of siding with rebels. Themis replies that her allegiance is to justice, not to a ruler. Mnemosyne laments that he will become a memory himself if he does not change. Tethys falls silent, knowing neutrality has limits. Cronus dismisses them, his ears ringing with prophecy, but his heart hardening in pride. As the Titanesses depart, they feel the last chance for peace slipping away. Oceanus remains absent, his neutrality turning into quiet dissent. The currents of destiny quicken. In the blackest hour of Othrys' night, Cronus thrashes in his sleep. His dreams are no longer his own. He is back in the void, swallowing his children, but they are not flesh. They are stone, cracking his teeth, grating his throat. The omphalos he swallowed rolls in his gut, but now it opens a single baleful eye, the eye of the sun he never devoured, watching him from within. He sees flashes of a cavern, of goat's milk mixed with honey, of drums that beat to the rhythm of his own fading heart. From the shadows of his chamber, a voice whispers, ancient and scarred, the voice of Uranus, his castrated father. "As I fell, so shall you," it hisses, the sound coiling around him like a serpent. "By the hand you sought to erase." Cronus awakens with a roar that shakes the pillars. He sits bolt upright, clutching the scythe left by his bedside. He is alone, drenched in cold sweat, yet the room feels crowded with ghosts and prophecies. His paranoia is no longer a suspicion. It is a certainty, a terror that now wears his son's face. On the eve of the solstice, Zeus gathers every ally upon Olympus's peak. Hestia builds a circular fire. Into its flames, each participant places a token. Demeter offers grains, shimmering like sunrise. Hera, a ribbon signifying unity. Hades, a stone dark as his future kingdom. Poseidon, a vial of salt water. Styx, a drop from her sacred river. The Cyclopes, a shard of glowing metal. The Hecatoncheires, a pebble from the deepest chasm. Standing within the circle, Zeus raises his lightning, not to strike but to solemnize. He speaks not of revenge, but of restoration. He declares that this war is for the liberation of all who suffer under fear, that their alliance is bound not by blood alone, but by shared purpose. One by one, voices murmur assent. Their oath is not to a king, but to each other, and to a cosmos where no creature need fear being swallowed. The flames flare blue, accepting their vow. A breeze dances through the circle, carrying their words into the world. In this moment, Olympus becomes more than a mountain. It becomes a covenant. On a cloudless night, Cronus looks north and sees a streak of light cleaving the sky. Not a random bolt, but a controlled arc that returns to its source. Thunder does not accompany it, yet the sight pierces him like prophecy. He calls Hyperion, Iapetus and Creus to witness. A second flash cuts through darkness and then vanishes. None of them has ever seen lightning that obeys a hand. Hyperion suggests it is a message. Iapetus interprets it as warning. Cronus's fear hardens into anger. He contemplates mobilizing the Titans, but he knows that acting now would mean acknowledging his vulnerability. He decides to watch, to tighten his grip on his scythe, to send spies to the north. The flashes continue, each one a silent trumpet. Deep inside, the Titan of Time knows time has turned against him. At Olympus, Zeus practices with his new lightning, feeling how each bolt hums with justice rather than destruction. He sends these signals not to taunt, but to announce. The old order hears, the balance shifts. In preparation for what is to come, Zeus leads his siblings to a high ridge overlooking Othrys. They stand in silence, each confronting the mountain that housed their torment. Hera sees towers she once dreamed of inhabiting. Now she feels only the weight of responsibility. Hades slips on his helm and vanishes, surveying Cronus's defenses unseen, feeling the pull of the underworld that awaits him. Poseidon watches the distance to the sea, calculating how tide and storm may aid them. Demeter lays her hand on the ground, sensing fields suppressed under the tyrant's rule. Hestia prays for a world where no fire is stolen. Zeus raises his lightning rod, but does not throw it. He breathes deeply and lowers his arm. "Not yet," he whispers. Their restraint is a promise to themselves. War will come, but on their terms. Each sibling's glance reveals not just anger, but the person they will become. Hera the strategist, Hades the lord of hidden places, Poseidon the ocean's fury, Demeter the earth's nurturer, Hestia the hearth's guardian. For now, they turn back to Olympus, carrying both their rage and their hope. Back at their camp, the siblings engage in moments that hint at their futures. Hera questions Zeus's plan, not out of dissent, but because she sees angles he does not. She suggests alliances and trap placements, revealing her instinct for rulership. Hades lingers at the edge of shadows, feeling comfort rather than dread in the darkness. He is drawn to the idea of a realm where souls find order. Poseidon practices with his trident by the river, waves bucking at his command. His power is wild like an untrained horse, and it thrills him. Demeter teaches young nymphs to tend seedlings that will feed those who survive the war. She finds solace in cycles of planting and harvest. Hestia listens to their debates, then quietly strengthens the hearth, understanding that peace begins at home. Zeus watches them, recognizing that each possesses a sovereignty that will one day manifest. He does not fear their strengths, he celebrates them. Their differences will be a foundation, not a fracture. In these small exchanges, the storm's human heart is revealed. Before leaving for war, Zeus meets with the Hecatoncheires on a plain strewn with stones. The giants stand like hills, patience on 1,000 palms. Zeus explains how they will hurl rocks not at bodies, but at walls, how they will shake the ground to unbalance the tyrants, not to destroy the land. Briareus asks whether mercy has a place when facing those who devoured children. Zeus answers that distinction is key. Titans who stood neutral or opposed Cronus's cruelty will be spared. Those who cling to oppression will be restrained. Cottus rolls a rock in his fingers, eager yet controlled. Gaius gazes skyward, awaiting the sign. The giants agree to Zeus's terms, understanding that their wrath will serve justice. They pound the earth lightly with their fists, sending a tremor through the mountains as a sign of oath. The alliance between them and Zeus is apparent. Immense power guided by the very measures of their justice for the war. They return to training, not with mindless fervor, but with disciplined anticipation. Days later, the sun dips behind Olympus, casting long shadows over their encampment. Arges, Brontes, and Steropes stand with Cottus, Briareus, and Gaius. Styx and her children form a row behind them. Hestia's flame glows steady at the center. Far in the distance, Othrys looms, its dark outline jagged and menacing. Zeus holds the bundled lightning in his hand. He recounts their journey, the deception of Rhea, the regurgitation of gods, the fall of Campe, the freeing of Cyclopes and hundred-handed, the forging of weapons, the neutrality of Oceanus, the council of Themis and Mnemosyne, Gaia's guidance. Each memory is both wound and strength. He raises his lightning once more but brings it down to his side. "Still not yet," he says. The others nod, understanding that the final step must be deliberate. The sky glows red and gold as the sun sets. Distant clouds flash with silent lightning. In that twilight, they feel suspended between eras. The old order trembles, the new waits. The resistance is ready, but wisdom holds their hand. Night falls, and with it, the future draws nearer. The world itself anticipates. Clouds gather without rain. A dry lightning dances along the horizon. Horses in distant plains stomp and whinny at invisible cues. Wolves lift their snouts and howl in odd rhythms. Birds fly south too early. In forests, old oaks creak as if in conversation. In mountains, stones shift slightly in their beds. Oceanus records changes in his currents, sensing the world's rotation altering under cosmic tension. The Moirai, unseen, spin thicker threads on their looms. These signs are not coincidences. but manifestations of cosmic imbalance. Zeus and Gaia interpret them as confirmation that the universe senses the impending clash. Titans who remain neutral feel unease. It is as if the cosmos holds its breath. No sword has yet clashed, but every element, air, earth, water, fire, vibrates with anticipation. The stage is not merely Olympus and Othrys, it is creation itself, waiting for the first bolt to be thrown. In the final night before action, Zeus sits alone on a cliff outside the camp, the bundled lightning beside him. The stars are bright and still, the Milky Way arching overhead like a river of souls. He thinks of the path that brought him here, of goat's milk and honey, of curate's drums drowning his infant cries, of a cavern's cradle carved by guardians, of Gaia's whispers and Métis' elixir. He feels both the weight of his siblings' trust and the gravity of the cosmos. Doubt flickers like a small flame. Will his revolt truly usher justice, or will he repeat the pattern he seeks to break? He recalls Themis' warning and Mnemosyne's stories. He promises himself that power will be shared, that no generation will devour another. Behind him, Hestia's fire glows warm. Ahead, Othrys is a dark outline. He whispers a vow to the stars, to Rhea, to the buried gods of the earth. In the quiet, thunder stirs within him. He stands and returns to camp, ready to transform patience into action. The calm holds for one more heartbeat. By the end of this episode, the canvas is painted, the players arranged. Zeus has not only freed the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires, but has forged with them a fellowship bound by purpose, not coercion. The Cyclopes have trapped storms in metal, handing thunder, tide, and shadow to those who will wield them with caution. The 100-handed giants have pledged to hurl stones at walls of oppression, not at the innocent. Styx's children have tempered courage with patience. Themis and Mnemosyne have anchored revolt in justice and memory. Oceanus and Tethys have stood aside, preserving the world's rivers for the day after war. Cronus, sensing his doom, trembles, but does not strike. Olympus has become a home and a covenant. The gods have sworn to each other and to the cosmos. The episode closes with Zeus raising his lightning yet again and lowering it. The storm has not broken, but its pressure is palpable. The old order wavers, the new takes shape. The Titanomachy looms, not simply a battle of strength, but a contest over the very meaning of order. Subscribe for more epic journeys. Visit myth2myth.com and discover all our products.